Hey guys, welcome back to the Power Play on WDSR Student Radio here at Duquesne Université. Make sure you're following us on Twitter. We are at the Power Play 14, and we are tweeting live now during the show, and we will do our best to be tweeting throughout the remainder of the season and also in the playoffs. That's still a work in progress, but we're getting there.
Kate, what was that introduction? Like, half our listeners are listening at home right now being like, is she having a stroke?
Duskany.
I don't know about having a stroke. I just like to have
Jake just ran into the studio because he was listening and he had no idea where he was. He thought he went to another country.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm transferring again. I just can't get settled in one school.
Well, as everyone knows, it is indeed the last week of the regular season, which some teams might be thankful for at this point in the season. And there are really only a couple games left during the season that actually matter. And in a little bit, I wanted to get you guys, if you had an opinion about resting players before the playoffs. But right now, the Blue Jackets are in the playoffs from now, but their hopes rest on games in 4 different cities in the span of just 99 hours.
It's crazy. It happens every year. I know this year is a new playoff system, but there's always that last week where about 4 or 5 teams have a chance of making the playoffs. And then even if you look in the standings, there's so much can change between where Columbus plays, where Detroit plays. It's astounding how every game matters. Like tonight's games have implications on the playoff standings and who makes the playoffs. It's just unbelievable what to think sort of can happen the next week. Katie, do you agree?
Sorry, Jake's kind of interfering with my show here and my vibe. My vibe. Yeah, I'm sorry. No, I agree. No, I totally agree with that. Yeah, it's you did that on purpose, didn't you? You knew Jake was messing with me, and you knew that I totally missed everything that you were saying. But no, the standings as they are right now, yeah, these next couple of games coming up for a couple of these teams are going to be absolutely crucial moving forward in this last week here of the regular season. I would love to see Columbus make it. Just because, I don't know, like they've kind of been out of contention for quite a while. Most people forget that Columbus even has a team. So I would love to see the cards play out in their favor. I know it's kind of probably off topic from what you were getting at, but you can thank Jake for that.
If Columbus wins, they jump ahead of Detroit. But if they lose, they would play the Penguins, and then Boston would play Detroit. Right now, if you're looking at NHL.com, the Penguins are slated to play the Red Wings if the playoffs ended today. Or started today. They're not ending yet.
Oh, I hope they're not ending yet. That was a fast postseason.
And speaking of the new format, it's been the case since 79-80 that 16 teams will qualify for the playoffs. But this season, however, the bracket's set that it's a largely division-based bracket with wild cards. 3 teams in each division will make up the first 12 teams in the playoffs, but the remaining 4 spots will be filled with the next 2 highest placed finishers in each conference based on their regular season record and regardless of division. It's possible for one division in each conference to send 5 teams, while another may only just send 3.
I think I just worked that out. Yeah, it's definitely an interesting something different which the NHL has tried to do with the playoffs this year. Personally, I'm a fan. I love the new format. It's going to create a bit more interesting first round matchups. Obviously, the whole realignment as well changed things up a bit from last year as far as we had sort of the different divisions and the different teams set up. But we're still looking at those first round matchups. Like the Penguins can still possibly play Philly in a first round matchup, which I think would be absolutely delightful for all NHL fans and for the state of Pennsylvania.
I don't know if it'd be delightful for Penguin and Philly fans. I mean, that's one of those matchups where, yeah, you like to see it, but when you have something like the playoffs riding on who wins each game, I don't know, that puts a lot of pressure on that. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, that's an awesome.
I'm sure if you're a Flyers fan, Katie, you'd probably be licking your lips about playing the Penguins.
Well, yeah, I mean, as a Penguins fan, I'm licking my lips too. I would love to knock the Flyers out of the playoffs, but you know, I feel like they're both evenly matched at this point, so it could go either way. So as a Penguins fan, that makes me extremely nervous. But at this point, the Penguins are still matched up with Detroit. And even that would be a scary matchup. Detroit's still got a pretty strong team, even though a lot of their guys are still out on injury.
And just to describe the point system, so right now Columbus has 87 points, Detroit has 88, and Philly has 89, and they all have 4 games remaining. I think Detroit, one of the things which is a tiebreaker when it gets down to it is regulation or overtime wins. What's one thing which Columbus, I believe, is lacking in comparison to the other 2 teams? I think Philly actually is dead last in that category in comparison with Columbus and Detroit as far as regulation or overtime wins. So that's something interesting to look at in the next couple of games as far as even an overtime loss you would take. Being any of those teams, an extra point could mean the difference between you making it and not making it, especially if you're on the bubble.
You know, I every time it gets down to this point of the season in the NHL and you're looking at the teams that need those 1 or 2 extra points to push them into the playoffs, the best way that I can describe that, or the way I see it, is it's kind of like me when I hit the end of the semester. You know, you really wish maybe you would have pushed yourself, maybe, you know, got a couple extra points earlier in the season that could have, you know, put you where you wanted to be at this point. But I don't know. You'd think after 4 years of college I would learn, but apparently I have not, just like some of these teams.
Now, going back, we tweeted this the other night when the Penguins announced that sort of Crosby obviously strained himself cooking in the morning with an upper body injury. Resting players is something which a lot of these teams have to think about towards the end of the season. If you're already locked into a position, it doesn't make too much sense to keep playing players when there's still a couple of games left in the season. Sure, Sidney Crosby probably deserves a game or 2 break. Same with sort of Tuukka Rask. I know Boston's in the contention for the President's Cup, so it's a bit different to Pittsburgh. But you want your players to be 100% fit. Potentially, you could have a 7-game matchup in that first series, and we've all seen teams go to that 7th game and just drop. As far as they're just physically tired, they've had players that have been working to get into the playoffs, and then they've gotten into the playoffs, and they've struggled.
Yeah, I totally agree with the resting your players right before the playoffs start, because, you know, 7 games is that's a long series, and, you know, you got a couple rounds of 7 games if you're going to try to go all the way. So at this point, you know, yeah, whether Crosby was flipping burgers or whatever and injured his arm, I think sitting him out was a smart decision on the Penguins' part. He's like we talked earlier, you know, he's the front runner for the Hart Trophy. He's had a fantastic season. He can afford to sit out a couple games and get ready moving forward into the playoffs, along with some of your other major players. I think it's a smart decision by the teams that are already know they're in the playoffs. They've clinched their spots, but the teams that are still pushing to get in the playoffs at this point, I don't know, that could go either way, because you could sit your better players out and rest them in hopes that they're going to make it into the playoffs, but then you risk not making it by having your top goal scorers, your top team men on the ice.
You feel like that if you're a team in contention, though, that you wouldn't rest those players. Sort of like I feel like if you're a top 2 team and you've been locked into, the only time you rest your players is when you're locked into a position. If you're locked into the 8th seed and no one can catch you, which is probably going to happen in the next 48 hours, then you can start to rest players. But I feel like right now that unless you're guaranteed a position, you shouldn't be resting players.
Yeah, that's basically the same stance I have on that. But yeah, for the teams already in, keep doing what you're doing. It's going to set you up for a great playoff run. So, all right. Well, as the rest of the NHL season wraps up, we do have to note there was an interesting event that happened at a charity game on Long Island this past weekend. I believe
it was very interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. I don't think definitely unexpected for the fans in attendance. There was a huge brawl that broke out on the ice between it was at the police department and the fire department in New York. I would have loved to have been there to see that.
It's a charity game, though. That's what I don't understand. I mean, I've been to the charity game between the firemen and the police officers in Pittsburgh, and maybe there was a dirty hit here or there, or I believe there was just a small scruff 2 years ago when we were there. But a bench clearing brawl, a charity game, really?
Yeah, no, I can see your point, but I do think that it would really get the crowd kind of fired up and maybe make them think that it was worth their time to come, especially if some of them don't always go to the big hockey games. I mean, maybe the size of the brawl was a little inappropriate for the nature of the game,
Benches
but
clearing, goalies fighting.
yeah,
That's the thing.
yeah, that's. I mean, okay, I can see a brawl maybe between two or three or
That's what
four
I'm
players.
saying.
But yeah, the whole benches clearing, goalies fighting. You barely even see that in the NHL.
Yeah, I was just waiting for one of the fans to just get started and have a full ad. Obviously, there's a bit of. I know they're all saving lives and they're all working together as far as for the city, but I feel like there might be a little bit of firepower against the two of them. Sort of, I know, sort of police, sort of. They all like each other, but there's still a bit of rivalry as far as between the fire department and the police department. That'll always be there.
That's the thing. They're all working men. They have to be careful in what they do. They're protecting their city, especially up there.
Yeah, I can see the rivalry. Oh, I'm so tongue-tied tonight between the two groups, but yeah, just the size of the brawl, totally uncalled for, but definitely worth mentioning. It was a interesting afternoon on Long Island for that group.
We are going to go ahead and take our final break, and when we return, we will have Jake, fresh from Vegas,
alive!
back in the studio to rant about whatever is on his mind tonight. I'm hoping he's not going to make us all jealous and have it deal with gambling in Vegas. I am curious to see how much money you won, though, Jake.
I heard he got married as well, so we'll see if that rumor's true after the break.
We are Chris, Daisy, and Katie. If you're not following us, you should be at the Power Play 14. Keep up with what's going on and our crazy adventures here, apparently. But we're going to take our last break, and we will be right back.